Welcome to Tech Leader 360.
We were able to convince Bill Gates.
Effective leaders understand the weight of what their leadership is, but they don't recognize it in themselves.
In my experience, stories change culture.
Why are you going to all these Muslim countries? Are you a drug smuggler?
And there was an entrepreneur there that was talking about product market fit.
What made you to leave the Microsoft?
I was doing well at Microsoft.
Can you talk about leadership experience in nonprofits?
Leadership happens top down, side to side, bottom up.
Do you empower your staff or do you micromanage your staff?
It would be foolish.
All of these people, whether it's Satya Nadella or Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer, Paul Moritz, I mean, they're just endless number of people who kind of gave you time. And with that time, you actually learn things.
Leaders have built their own stories. Tomorrow, you can build your own story. Use Tech Leader 360 as your reference tool to build your leadership journey.
If you are a software engineer or a data scientist or a solution architect or any IT professional, this is for you. Without further ado, please join with me to welcome Shirish NADKARNI. Shirish, welcome to our podcast, Tech Leader 360.
Thank you, Jagan. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, first of all, how do you feel coming to this podcast, seeing this podcast setup? What is your experience here?
No, that's great. It looks like a very professional setup. So I'm glad you're doing this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And my team, Kalyan Bondugala, did the entire podcast. It's almost like a 3 to 4 months of effort to build this podcast. So thank you very much, Shirish, for joining this podcast. And I know you personally on multiple occasions. It's been almost like 12 years back. I met you in a Thai event. I didn't know at that time you were part of HBS MBA and all the stuff. So since then, I've known you and I've been talking to you, and I'm super happy to see your progress and overall the milestones that you have achieved. So it's a very fascinating to hear the story when I was talking to you, and finally I decided to invite you to my podcast, talk about your journey, your transformative leadership experience or journey that I wanted to talk and hear from you. So when I see your profile, you came from India, you immigrated from India, and then you went to Harvard Business School to do an MBA. So what prompted you to come to United States since the beginning, Shirish?
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting. I've been, I was really fascinated by the United States from a very early age. I still remember seeing a movie of the moon landing in 1969 when I was 9 years old. And that was my first kind of impression about America. And my father used to also, when I was a teenager, used to get Newsweek and Time magazine. So I used to read that from cover to cover.
Wow.
And I always wanted to come to the US because this was the land of opportunity and technological achievement. But more so because I was later on when I went to college, I went to IIT Bombay. I was really interested in doing computer science, and at that time, they didn't really have many facilities for that. You'd be surprised to know that the computer that they had at that time was a Russian clone of IBM 360 mainframe computer, and we had to program in with programming cards, punch cards, which really was a very difficult process. And so I decided at that time to come to the United States and do an undergraduate education in computer science. So I came here to University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and that's where I transferred from IIT Bombay to Michigan, and then I completed my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, computer science.
Wow. So when you said moon landing, actually, in fact, we were last week, coincidentally, we were in NASA. Yeah, and in fact, my son's name is also Neil, which is a Neil, the first
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong, right? So my son, last week, he took a picture with, there is a picture with a Neil Armstrong. So Neil standing right next to Neil Armstrong. Probably this would be a more motivation for him as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Basically, you came to United States and you did an MBA at Harvard Business School. And then you came to Seattle to work for Microsoft.
Correct.
So that is a time the Microsoft was just building at that time. So what was your what was going on in your brain at the time to work for a company like Microsoft? Because Microsoft was not that popular at that time, number one.
Yeah.
And what was the culture at the time of you joined Microsoft? Because we are here, we know the complete transformation that is happening. Satya is making rapid strides in Gen AI, all these things happening, right? But we wanted to see your experience. How was Microsoft by then?
Yeah, so I joined Microsoft right out of business school. So this was 1987. And you're right, at that time, Microsoft was not as well known as it is today. But Bill Gates had just appeared on the cover of Time magazine.
Oh, yeah.
As kind of the man of the year. I was quite fascinated by the development of the IBM PC and then the clones thereafter. And I felt that the computer revolution was really going to happen on the PC platform. And there was no other place, no better place to join a company than Microsoft. At that time, they were an MS-DOS company. They also had a number of applications like Microsoft Word and Multiplan and Microsoft Excel on the Macintosh and so forth. And so they were clearly one of the big players. They were not a monopoly at that time, but they were one of the big players along with Lotus and WordPerfect and Borland and so forth. I felt that this would be, a great opportunity for me to be part of the PC revolution. So I joined as a product manager for email technology. At that time, very few people actually used email. You'd be, surprised to know that. Email was primarily used in very large corporations where there was need to communicate more efficiently. And at that time, they would have email systems on mainframes and mini computers, like IBM Profs and Digital All-in-One and so forth. And I had the opportunity as a product manager to really establish the email technology for the first time on the PC platform.
Oh, wow.
So that was an incredible opportunity to create a completely new category of software, which was email, and to see that evolution over time. So that's what I did when I joined Microsoft. And then subsequently, I was there for about 12 years. I worked on development tools. I worked on MSN. I did the acquisition of Hotmail for Microsoft. I also got us into the search business, for the first time, launched MSN.com. So it was a very, very rich experience in a variety of different, technologies. It was one of the biggest acquisitions that Microsoft did at that time. Of course, since then, Microsoft has done many much bigger acquisitions. Basically, I was responsible for driving the product strategy for MSN. And we felt that email was one of the key technologies, key applications that people would use on the internet to communicate with each other. I mean, you yourself, you got a Hotmail account. And we didn't have an internet-based email solution at that time. So one option was for us to build it ourselves. The other option was to go acquire the technology. And despite a lot of resistance internally, we were able to convince Bill Gates to purchase Hotmail because they were growing very rapidly. They had at that time they had about 8 or 9 million users. They were adding 1 million users a month. And they had known how to scale the technology to millions of users. And I felt that we would be much better off having a solution in the market quickly as opposed to waiting for our own internal technology development. And so despite the price, which is about $400 million, we were able to convince Bill Gates and the management team to go acquire Hotmail, and I was the key person driving that acquisition within Microsoft. And it turned out well, for Microsoft. Over time, I think they grew to over 300 million users, and it was a key piece of technology that brought people to MSN every day.
Definitely.
Email is an application that you use multiple times a day. So it's a great way to keep people coming back. And then from there, you use other technologies that MSN offered.
When it comes to build versus buy, what would be your choice? When, let's assume that as a technology leader, if you had a choice to take some business decisions, build versus buy, which one do you prefer to take? Because now, when it comes to Hotmail, this was a buy. But buy always be superior, or build is a superior?
I mean, it depends on the situation. At that time, we felt that if we had to build the technology ourselves, it would have taken us easily another 2 years. And internet was moving very rapidly. And it was very important for Microsoft to establish itself as the dominant web portal on the internet. And so we felt that time was of the essence, and that even though we had to pay a significant price for Hotmail, that it was a better decision. Before that, Microsoft almost made a purchase of a company called Excite for search technology, and at the last minute couldn't arrive at a acquisition price with the Excite folks. And they left that on the table, and as a result of that, didn't get into the search business for a long time. So you have to be very careful about making those kinds of decisions, because you might say, okay, I'm going to build it, but by the time you make that decision, it's another 8 or 9 months, and then another year to build the technology. When things move at internet speed, you need to move quickly. So my bias was for action, to do something quickly. But there are times where it might make more sense to go build it internally as opposed to going and buying the technology.
Fantastic. Because when we are talking to all our current customers, because we propose some of our build solutions, but we always get a resistance of the other opposite on that. So we always debate which one is the right approach.
Sure.
So thank you very much for giving that insight, Shirish.
I was doing well at Microsoft, and I was leaving a number of Microsoft options on the table, which had not yet, vested completely. But I was inspired by the Hotmail experience. Hotmail was started by also another Indian founder, Sabir Bhatia, and was inspired by the success that he had achieved. And I saw an opportunity to take that concept but apply it to kind of enterprise, for small to medium-sized companies, offer a similar kind of solution but with features that were appropriate for small, medium-sized businesses. And so I saw an opportunity. I was inspired by the Hotmail experience, and I felt that, for a long time I had the backing of Microsoft. It would be kind of interesting to go out and try to do this on your own and call something a success, entirely your own success, as opposed to saying, you have to rely on some other company to back you.
I see.
Yeah. So for all those reasons, I decided to leave Microsoft and jump into the startup world. It was also a time where you could more easily raise funding.
At that time.
This was during the .com boom.
Or 2000.
This was 1999.
I see.
Yeah. And then unfortunately the .com bust happened right after that. But I was able to raise about $15 million of funding.
Fantastic.
And I was able to make that last for a long time and kind of ride the .com bust, and at the end be acquired by BlackBerry.
Yeah.
So I had a good exit at that point, but it was a tough time. I probably met with 5 to 7 VC firms at that time, some of the top VC firms, both locally as well as in the Bay Area. And the key thing in raising money is to always paint a big picture, big vision. So basically the vision I painted for the VCs at that time was that, here, you had the example of Hotmail, which was a consumer web-based email solution, very successful, acquired by Microsoft. Why not apply the same concept for small businesses? Because for small businesses at that time, to have email was a fairly expensive proposition because they had to, this was the time of on-prem software. So you had to buy this, email server, you had to install the software, you had to upgrade it, make sure there were no viruses. So it took a lot of work to run an email system, right? So my proposition was that you didn't have to do any of that. We would offer all the same features along with calendaring and, scheduling, all of those features through the cloud. So ours was, along with Salesforce.com, was one of the first enterprise-grade SaaS solution in the market, which meant that you didn't have to do any of the work to install and administer the software. You just access the email through our web-based interface. So that was the vision that we painted, and that's how we got the funding for our company.
So then this Team-On experience, right? The Team-On has been acquired by BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Then as part of the deal, you're supposed to be working at BlackBerry. But when it comes to one side you used to work at Microsoft. Now you're part of a startup, and then you shifted to work forcibly you're supposed to be working at BlackBerry. How did you adapt the change from Microsoft and startup to BlackBerry? And what was your experience?
BlackBerry at that time was not a very big company. So they were more like a more advanced, startup. So they had also a startup culture, and I got to work fairly closely with the CEOs. They had actually 2 CEOs at BlackBerry, the national founder, the tech founder, and then they hired somebody to run the business. And I got to work with them very closely. So it was, and then also I got to launch a number of BlackBerry devices. I launched the first form factor BlackBerry device called the 7100.
7100.
Typically, if you remember, BlackBerry was more of a kind of squarish device.
I used a BlackBerry back in 2002.
Right. So this was the 7100 was the first form factor BlackBerry. So it was more narrow, like a phone, with a keyboard to type. So I got to do some really interesting things at BlackBerry, including launching a number of devices, for them.
Yeah, I still remember the time many people said that many banking employees are forcibly supposed to be using BlackBerry because of the security that BlackBerry provides. Even Obama used to have access to only the BlackBerry.
Right.
So that was a respect on the BlackBerry side.
Yes.
And you're being part of that kind of a technology, BlackBerry, and working.
While I was happy working at BlackBerry, I was still anxious to go back to my early startup roots. I enjoyed that experience at Team-On. And at that time, I remember I used to fly a lot between Seattle and Toronto to go to visit the BlackBerry headquarters. And at that time, I noticed while I was traveling that they had these kiosks in the airport with big yellow boxes from Rosetta Stone. And this was in 2005, 2006 timeframe. And, broadband internet was widely available and being adopted and so forth. So I was struck that, somebody was still selling CD-ROM software when that same solution could be delivered over the internet and could be delivered in a much more interesting fashion. So that kind of led me to kind of the opportunity with language learning software. And having grown up in India and learning different languages and learning English, I knew the importance that a lot of people around the world, had on learning English. So I felt that this was a very big opportunity. There are billion plus people who wanted to learn English, and why not deliver that solution over the internet? And not only that, but also allow you to interact with native speakers of a particular language. So you could actually learn it more effectively than just learning it from a computer. So that was the vision behind Live Mocha, which we launched in 2007. And then over time, we grew to 15 million members around the world. We were the largest language learning software before Duolingo, came on stream, and we were bought by Rosetta Stone. So that's how we came up with the idea.
Yeah, so I just researched a little bit on the Live Mocha, and it was super dazzled to hear the growth factor that you built it inside the Live Mocha. Number one is that having a 15 million users entire worldwide, almost like 200 countries were using this technology, and you had to build a technology for that level of user base, right? So what was the entire growth engine? How did you do the engineering of entire growth?
So one of the things that was critical to our growth was kind of having a freemium model. So with Rosetta Stone, you had to pay like $300-400 to use the software, or if you wanted to go to a school, language learning school in China or something, it would cost you a fair amount of money in that. So we said, let's build a freemium model where the basic software was available for free. But if you wanted more advanced language learning, if you're really serious about it, then you could pay for a more advanced language learning solution. So that model was instrumental in driving the growth. And then also we got a lot of really good coverage. New York Times had a big article on us. New York Times is not just a U.S. newspaper, it's syndicated internationally as well. So a lot of people around the world read the New York Times, and we got coverage on the International Herald Tribune and a number of different news publications all around the world. And then we also would market in other countries. So while we were based in the U.S., we would market in countries like Brazil and China and India using SEO, SEM technologies to make people in other parts of the world aware of our solution. So we spent some marketing money to build the brand, but most of the growth came virally from word of mouth.
Got it.
Yeah.
Since I wanted to ask you a different question, is that since this is a Live Mocha having 200 countries user base, 15 million user base, right? So now this is a second startup. Now you had built or prior you already built one startup and it has been acquired by Blackberry. Now you are building one more startup. Was there any factor at that moment of that again you have to go through the fundraising, you have to do the same song and dance, you have to do again one more time. So I wanted to see your lens, see through your lens in terms of that building a second startup. Pretty much most of the people think that, okay, I'm done. I made a good fortune. I wanted to retire. I want to go to Florida and stay in the beach. That kind of a mindset, right? But what was going in your brain at the time? And was the path was easy, or was like, are you ready for a big hustle that you are planning to do? I just wanted to see.
Yeah. So again, this story is somewhat similar to my first startup. So we started working on Live Mocha in 2007. This was right before the financial crisis happened. So funding was, again, relatively easy to come by. I didn't raise as much money. I raised more like $6 million initially for Live Mocha. And because I had success with my first company, it was a little bit easier to raise money. But then when it came time to raise a second round of funding, the financial crisis had happened and funding was very, very difficult to come by. And everyone wanted to have a proven revenue model. And we were still in the early stages of proving that out, especially because we were trying, most of our user base was coming from international markets where at that time, credit cards were still not widely prevalent.
Right.
So even if somebody wanted to pay for our software, they didn't have the means to pay for it. So we were still building our, revenue model. Now it's a lot easier to charge money and, get people to pay for it and so forth. But at that time, it was still a major challenge. So raising a second round became very, very challenging. We were lucky. We did manage to raise a second round from a VC firm called August Capital, and we raised about $8 million and at that time. But we went through some tough times, which are, not in your control.
I see.
A lot of times in startups, timing is everything. And in both instances, I was lucky to have raised money when the timing was right. When it came to the second round, the economy was not in good shape.
Right. By 2008.
But we were still able to, keep going and raise, a second round of funding and so forth.
Now, you wrote a book in Startup to Exit, right? So why did you write the book? Was there any gap or was there any void?
So one of the things I've been doing in the last 7-8 years is spending a lot of time with an organization called TIE or TIE.
TIE. That is where we met, right?
Yes. And TIE is a global nonprofit, as you know, which is, its mission is to foster entrepreneurship. And we have a TIE chapter here in Seattle. And so as part of that, I created a program called the TIE Entrepreneur Institute. It's a program where we bring in experts in various fields to teach entrepreneurs everything from, ideating, coming up with new ideas, how to do fundraising, how to achieve product market fit, how to build a go-to-market strategy, etc. So I've created this program with about 10 different sessions to, educate entrepreneurs. And got very good feedback. A lot of people have gone through that and created their own startups and so forth. But I felt that the message and the learnings could have been more widely distributed. And so that was the thinking behind the book, that essentially the same content, I would put into a book format and make that available to, entrepreneurs all over the world.
Fantastic.
In fact, I mentioned in India, and Mumbai airport carries my...
I saw
in their airport bookstore.
Yeah, I saw you posted in LinkedIn.
Yes, right, yeah. So I'm happy that it's available even in India, which is a hotbed of entrepreneurship as we speak. So my mission with the book is to really educate as many entrepreneurs as I can and make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that I have made in the past.
Correct.
Others have made in the past.
Correct.
The main thing I would say is that a lot of times, startups are started by technologists who are enamored with technology and they feel that, if I build this solution with this technology, wouldn't it be great? And they project themselves as the customer, that solution. But when they actually go and launch it, they find out that there isn't really a pain point that it's addressing that is important to a particular customer.
Yeah.
And so my main feedback is for entrepreneurs to really spend time understanding the customer and what their pain points are, and make sure that you're addressing one of the top 2 or 3 pain points. It doesn't help you if you're addressing a pain point that's number 10, because they'll never get to it. And it's important that you address something that they are ready to pay money today. That, the moment you talk about, they're saying to you, when can you come and help us solve this problem that we have?
Yeah.
So make sure that you're really addressing a key pain point that they're willing to spend money, good money,
Yeah.
to deploy your solution for that.
Instead of building a software, find a customer who can buy your features.
Yeah.
So sell first. My statement to them is always is that sell first, build later.
Sure.
Oh my God, I never thought through about it. Thank you very much. So what do you think in the lines of build versus sell first and build later?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, which is that you need to spend the time talking to customers and really understanding their pain point to a point where they are saying, build this solution for me. I mean, a good example of that, I remember talking to Samir Bodas, who's the founder, CEO of iCertis. It happened that he was talking to the chief legal officer at Microsoft, and he said to Samir, hey, we would like to digitalize our contract management system. And that kind of struck him as being odd. Most of the time you negotiate a contract and you sign it and you put it in you print it out and you put it in a folder. It's never digitized. And so he never thought about that as a potential solution. And here was somebody who was saying, hey, we have this need to really understand our contracts, understand, what is the pricing behind it, what are our obligations, when it's going to be renewed. All of these things have to be extracted as information from a contract and dispersed within the organization. And that's why we need to digitize contracts.
I see.
And so the customer had articulated a pain point and said to Samir, hey, I'm willing to pay you to go build this solution, for us.
I see.
And that's how they went about building. So this is a perfect example of a, sell first.
Wow.
In fact, the customer was selling Samir on building that solution, and they were willing to pay them.
Yeah.
That's the perfect kind of scenario.
Even in my personal experience on a services business that we run, right? So what is the toughest thing if somebody asks me what is the toughest thing or what is the top priority for you in your business, like running a business operations or finance or building a technology, blah, blah, blah. They ask these kind of questions. I always say only one thing is that I want to find a customer with a problem statement.
Yeah.
Then everything will come automatic to the...
Right.
So thank you very much, Shirish, for validating on this.
Right.
And my audience definitely take this as a feature, as a sell first, build later approach model. Can you talk about the book, Winner Takes All, right? Can you please talk about that book, about this marketplace?
Yeah.
Shirish?
So I've been fascinated with marketplaces for a long time. With Mocha, we created one of the first digital marketplaces where, you could contract with a language tutor anywhere around the world to teach you a specific language. So we created essentially a marketplace between language learners and language tutors. And one of the great things about a marketplace is that, you get network effects because as, more consumers join, more suppliers join, more consumers join, and it's a virtuous cycle that becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until you become essentially a monopoly in your marketplace. And so I felt that was a story worth telling. I give a lot of examples in my book about, eBay and Alibaba and Amazon and others, and how they were created, how they launched, because launching a marketplace can be very difficult because, when you don't have any suppliers, consumers, it's very hard to get that off the ground.
Yeah.
So I talk about in my book how to get a marketplace off the ground, how to scale it and all that. And I hope that through this book that a lot of people will be inspired to create marketplaces and serve their customers in a more effective fashion.
Yeah, especially building a marketplace solutions and getting one side, as you rightly said, one side getting customer base, one side is a supplier base. For instance, if you take Uber is the best example of marketplace, right? So what are the biggest challenges that you have seen to get into such kind of a large enterprise?
Yeah, the biggest problem is getting it off the ground because of the chicken or the egg problem. So that's where I talk about in my book about how it's important to first focus on the supply side of the equation, and to try to get as many suppliers on board first before you go and try to acquire consumers. So good examples of that I talk about in my book about companies like DoorDash, Instacart, how they got started. So Instacart, as we all know, is a grocery delivery service. The way that the founder got started was by taking all the content. He scraped the content off Safeway's website and made that available through his site. And then people could then, make purchase decisions on what they wanted to buy for their groceries. And then he would then use Craigslist to acquire the drivers who would go and, purchase the groceries and then deliver that to the end customers. That's how he got started. Same thing with DoorDash. They started in Palo Alto. They scraped the menus from different restaurants from their websites and then made that available through their website. And they would actually literally physically call the restaurants to place the orders and then go pick it up. They didn't even have a electronic, system can communicate between their site and the restaurants. They did that over the phone initially. And then once they had enough critical mass, then they were able to go to the restaurants and get them on board on their platform and have more electronic ways of communication back and forth and so forth.
And so for these kind of marketplaces, right? Like now when you say marketplaces, for instance, one side is Amazon.com, the other side, for example, Care.com or Uber.com. It's okay if I can buy some products online, Amazon.com, which is still, I still have some level of trust. But when it comes to Care.com or Uber.com, where if I'm sending my teenager in the car, or if somebody wants to take care of my small kid at home, so how do we build a trust with these kind of marketplaces?
Yeah, that's very important. Building trust is because that's what drives liquidity in the marketplace. Airbnb is another example where a lot of people were hesitant to put their house on the market, and there was a story that came out about how somebody had rented their home through Airbnb and that home got trashed. So, the way that they responded to that was by setting up insurance that would promise the renters, the homeowners, that, if something happened to your home, we have $1 million policy that would compensate you for any damage to your home. Same thing with Care.com. They have, they do background checks to make sure that the nannies or the caretakers that you can contact and hire, they've been vetted and they've gone through a background check to make sure that there's nobody with a criminal background or anything of that sort who's on their system. So it depends on the situation, but yes, you have to establish trust in order to really drive liquidity in the marketplace.
I wanted to share my personal experience in Uber.com. So I never had any issues because we are talking about the marketplaces, but I never had any issue in United States. I travel all over the world, but there was no anomaly, or there is no kind of, there's no outlier from United States. But it has happened to me back in India a few times. 2 incidents in Bangalore, 1 incident in Udaipur. And in Bangalore incident, I was alone. I didn't take it much serious because I was able to handle it because I was consciously taking decisions, and that was okay. But I couldn't take it further when I was in Udaipur because my wife was with me, and safety was the biggest threat. And I really felt it, and that was a scared moment in my life. So right after we landed, we went to the airport safely, and immediately I reached out to Uber CEO India, and because I have an access to LinkedIn Uber CEO, immediately I reached out to him and sent a very polite message, and luckily he was kind enough to respond back immediately. And that entire incident has been resolved much professionally. So that means, so the reason I was asking this question is that, yes, I took the responsibility as a consumer level. At the same time, when I interacted directly to the CEO of an Indian Uber, then he was able to respond back and he was able to resolve it. So to me, one side has been resolved, but on top of it, definitely the business leaders should take the responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you can get some really bad press, and that can have a major impact on your business. Not to mention harm, being inflicted on your, unsuspecting consumers.
Awesome.
So I think it's very important for, build the trust, to build the safety. All of those factors have to be built to make sure that the marketplace functions efficiently and safely.
Yeah. So on this media, I wanted to thank India's CEO, Uber CEO. Thank you very much. Given your life junction where you are, what do you see going forward? Like, do you want to give back, or do you still want to take any big bets?
So basically, I love the startup environment. I try to spend my time advising, as many startups as possible. I make a few investments where I think it's a big, opportunity.
Okay.
So that's what I want to continue doing. I'll continue to write more books as well, and so that gives me enough time to my time. And so I expect for the next 5 to 10 years doing the same things. Working with startups, writing books.
Yeah. So everybody will dream of having this kind of a career, Shirish. And thank you very much. Now talking to you, I wanted to ask you that what kind of advice you would give to aspiring tech leaders or any technology leaders. So what would be the 1 or 2 advices that you can think of giving back to this podcast?
Yeah, I would certainly. I'm biased as a startup founder. I'm biased on startups. So if you're a tech leader, have some experience, really spend the time to understand, what big problems exist in your industry, and then see if you can do a startup, based on that, because if you're working in a specific industry, you've developed the domain knowledge in that industry, and you have the customer contact, then you're in a really good position to understand what are some of the big problems your customers are facing that have not yet been solved. And so I definitely encourage people to explore that, understand what are the problems, and see if you can actually go build a startup where somebody's actually willing to pay you to build a solution, for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, see, when I was when I was hearing from you right after your team on exit, now you had a your ears are open and you were watching new ideas, or you found the idea, you got the idea at the airport. So technically, looking out a problem statement is always a key. Is what you would.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying is that basically, if you're in a position where you have customer interaction, or if you don't, then look for opportunities for customer interaction, and spend time not just selling your technology, but also understanding their overall environment.
Nice.
Overall, what is the CIO thinking about? What are the problems that he or she has that are yet unsolved?
Wow.
And understand that really deeply, so that then you can go build your own solution for that problem.
Fantastic. So first of all, thank you very much, Shirish, for sharing your life lessons, wisdom, and your transformative leadership experience, right? So this is really fascinating for us, and definitely you are now sharing a great wisdom back to the community, and we look forward to receive more knowledge from you. And definitely you have made a huge impact to this community, and looking forward to be in touch with you. Again, thank you very much, and I wish you good luck in future endeavors, Shirish. Thank you again. Thanks for coming to our podcast.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation, and all the best with your podcast.
Thank you very much, Shirish.